My name is Harper. And the night my family finally said out loud what they had been showing me for years, I was standing in our front hallway with my back against the door. The wood dug into my spine where I had just slammed into it. My brother Brody was in my face. His finger jabbed at my chest as he screamed, "No one wants you here." Before I could even process the sting of those words, I heard a sound that froze my blood. Clapping. I looked past Brody's heaving shoulder. My mother, Deborah, was sitting on the beige sectional sofa. She held her smartphone up with one hand and a glass of Chardonnay in the other. She was recording us. "Good job, Brody," she said. Her voice was slurred but cheerful. "Show her who is boss." Then she set the wine glass down on the coffee table and clapped her hands together again. 30 minutes earlier, I had walked through that same door. My feet throbbed after a 12-hour shift at the marketing agency where I worked as a junior associate. I smelled like stale office coffee and exhaustion. All I wanted was to open my laptop and finish the freelance graphic design project I had been working on for 2 weeks. That money was my ticket out. It was the security deposit for an apartment across town. I needed to send the files by midnight to get paid. I walked into the living room, and the air was thick with the smell of body odor and energy drinks. Brody was sprawled on the recliner. He was screaming into a headset. He was typing furiously on a keyboard, my keyboard. He was using my work laptop, the machine I had bought with my own savings because my parents refused to help me. "What are you doing?" I asked. My voice trembled. He did not even look at me. "I am streaming." He yelled at the screen. 500 people are watching this raid. Do not ruin this for me." I stepped forward and looked at the screen. My design software was closed. A massive game window was open. I minimized the game. My desktop was clean. My project folder was gone. "Where are my files?" I asked. Panic rose in my throat like bile. Brody rolled his eyes. "I needed space for the game update. I deleted that junk folder. It was just pictures. You can draw them again." I felt the blood drain from my face. Junk folder. That was $3,000 worth of work. That was my freedom. I reached for the laptop. "Give it to me," I said. Brody ripped the headset off. He turned to his webcam. "Chat, look at this," he shouted. "My crazy sister is trying to ruin my career. She is sabotaging the stream because she is jealous." He stood up and shoved me. It was not a gentle push. It was a violent two-handed shove. I stumbled backward across the rug. I tripped over his cables. I flew backward until my spine collided with the front door. That was when Deborah started clapping. She did not ask if I was hurt. She did not tell her 29-year-old son to stop assaulting his sister. She hit record on her phone. "Get her out of here, Brody," she said. "Let your brother focus. He is actually doing something with his life." In that moment, something inside me just switched off. The anger vanished. The fear vanished. It was replaced by a cold and heavy clarity. I looked at Brody, who was panting like he had just won a prize fight. I looked at my mother, who was smiling at her phone screen like a proud director. "Okay," I said softly. Message received. I turned around and walked up the stairs. I did not run. I did not slam the bedroom door. I grabbed my backpack. I had 10 minutes before the numbness wore off. I packed 2 pairs of jeans, 3 t-shirts, my toothbrush. I grabbed the laptop even though the screen was cracked from the fall. I opened my desk drawer and took my passport. That was the most important thing. It was my proof of identity in a house that refused to see me. I zipped the bag shut. The sound was loud in the silent room. I was done. I walked down the hallway with my backpack digging into my shoulders. My father, Richard, was sitting in his usual armchair in the living room. The television was muted. He was scrolling through his tablet with a detached expression. He did not look up when I walked past him. He did not ask where I was going at 11 o'clock at night. He just sighed loud enough for me to hear. "Stop the theatrics, Harper," he called out without turning his head. "You are making a scene over nothing. You will be back by morning when you realize nobody else is going to put up with your attitude." I stopped for a second. My hand hovered over the brass doorknob. For 26 years I had waited for him to defend me. I had waited for him to be a father instead of an enabler. That hope died quietly in the hallway. I did not answer him. I opened the heavy front door. The winter wind rushed in. It bit at my exposed skin and swirled around the warm entryway. I stepped out onto the porch and made a deliberate choice. I did not pull the door shut. I did not lock it. I left it wide open to the freezing night. I wanted the cold to invade their perfect house. I wanted them to feel the chill of my absence physically. I got into my 10-year-old sedan. The engine sputtered before it roared to life. My phone was vibrating against my thigh. It was likely a flood of texts from Brody mocking me or my mother demanding I come back and apologize. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat without looking at it. I backed out of the driveway. I did not look back at the house. I just focused on the road and the fuel gauge. The orange light was glowing. I had less than 20 miles left in the tank. I pulled into a 24-hour gas station 3 miles down the road. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. They cast a sickly yellow glow on the dirty pavement. I got out and swiped my debit card at the pump. I selected the cheapest grade of fuel. The screen flashed processing. Then it beeped, a harsh and rejecting sound. Transaction declined, I frowned. That was impossible. I had just been paid 2 days ago. I had been saving aggressively for 6 months to move out. I swiped the card again. I made sure to insert the chip firmly. Processing. Beep. Transaction declined. Please see cashier. A knot of cold dread tightened in my stomach. It felt heavier than the shove Brody had given me. I got back into the front seat and grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unlock the screen. I opened my banking app. The Face ID load wheel spun for what felt like an eternity. When the dashboard finally loaded, I stopped breathing. The balance was $4.12. I stared at the number. I blinked, hoping it was a glitch. It was not. I tapped on the transaction history. 1 minute after I'd walked out the door, a transfer had been initiated. Transfer to joint account ending in 4492. That was my parents' account. They had transferred $8,000. They had drained every cent I had saved from overtime shifts and freelance gigs. I remembered the day we opened that account. I was 18 years old. Deborah had told me it was for my own good. She said it would make it easier for them to help me with tuition or emergencies. I had never removed their names because I trusted them. I thought family did not steal from family. I was wrong. This was not just theft. This was a leash. They knew I had nowhere to go without money. They knew I could not rent an apartment, or buy food, or even fill my gas tank. They were trying to starve me back into submission. I sat there in the cold car and screamed. It was a silent scream that tore at my throat. I slammed my hands against the steering wheel until my palms burned. They took $8,000. They took my work. They took my safety. And they left me with $4.12 to survive the winter. I looked at the gas gauge again. The needle was below the empty line. I could not buy gas. I could not buy the bottle of water my throat was desperate for. I had to move. If the car died here, I would freeze. I put the car in drive and pulled out of the station. I drove delicately. I coasted down hills and barely touched the accelerator. Every red light felt like a threat. I drove to the only place I could think of. Paige lived 20 minutes away in a small duplex on the other side of the city. The drive felt like a funeral procession for my former life. My eyes were glued to the dashboard. The range indicator dropped to 0 miles when I was still 5 blocks away. I whispered a prayer to a God I was not sure I believed in anymore. Just let me get there. I coasted into Paige's driveway on fumes. The engine cut out the second I put it in park. I sat there for a moment in the dark silence. Shame washed over me. I was 26 years old. I was a professional. And I was about to knock on my best friend's door with $4 to my name. I knocked softly. A light flicked on inside. Chains rattled. Paige opened the door wearing oversized sweatpants and a messy bun. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside. She did not ask questions. She saw the laptop bag and the hollow look in my eyes. I sat on her couch while she heated up a can of tomato soup. The smell of food made my stomach cramp violently. I had not eaten since breakfast. When she handed me the bowl, I held it with both hands to warm my freezing fingers. "Paige," I said. My voice cracked. "I need to borrow $20 for gas, and maybe some cash for food. They took everything. They emptied my bank account." Paige sat down next to me. Her face hardened. "We will figure it out, Harper. You can stay here on the couch for as long as you need." I took a spoonful of soup. It tasted like salvation. As the warmth spread through my chest, I realized something fundamental. This was no longer just a family dispute. This was not a disagreement about a laptop or a shove. This was a war for my existence. They had tried to cripple me. They had tried to force me to crawl back on my knees. I looked around Paige's small and cluttered living room. It was not fancy. It did not have expensive leather furniture or a 60-inch television. But it was safe. I made a vow right there in the dim light. I would sleep on this floor. I would work 3 jobs. I would eat instant noodles for every meal. I would do whatever it took to survive. But I would never step foot in that house again. I would never let them hold $1 over my head again. I was $4.12 away from being a beggar. But I was finally free. The first 3 months were not just difficult. They were a systematic dismantling of my previous existence. I lived on Paige's couch for the first 2 weeks before I found a studio apartment the size of a walk-in closet. It smelled like damp plaster and old carpet, but the name on the lease was mine and mine alone. To pay for it, I worked myself to the bone. By day, I was a junior associate at the agency, where I pitched campaigns and analyzed data from 9 to 5. By night, I was a bartender at a dive bar called the Rusty Anchor, where I poured cheap beer and dodged clumsy flirtations from 7 in the evening until 2 in the morning. My hands were always sticky with lime juice and simple syrup. My feet felt like they were permanently bruised. But every Friday when I deposited my tips into my new bank account, I felt a savage kind of satisfaction. This money was safe. Nobody could transfer it out while I slept. I changed my phone number and gave the new digits only to Paige. I was a ghost to my family, and that silence was my shield. Then the parasites tried to feed again. I was on my lunch break at the agency eating a cold sandwich when my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was an automated alert from eBay based on my saved search preferences for vintage vinyl records. I clicked the link and felt the blood boil in my veins. The seller account was named Gamer King Brody. The item was my limited edition collection of classic rock albums, the ones I had spent 5 years hunting down at flea markets and estate sales. They were listed for a fraction of their value. I scrolled down to the description. The caption read, "Cleaning out the runaway sister trash. Everything must go so I can upgrade my setup." He was selling my memories to buy video game skins. I clicked on his seller profile. It was not just the records. He had listed my designer handbag. He had listed my winter coat. He had listed the silver necklace my grandmother gave me before she died. He was liquidating my life piece by piece and mocking me while he did it. My thumb hovered over the report button. I wanted to call the police. I wanted to drive over there and scream until the neighbors called the cops. But I stopped. I took a deep breath and let the cold logic I was learning to master take over. If I reported him now, he would just claim the items were abandoned property. He would say I left them behind. It would be my word against his. Instead, I took a screenshot. I captured the listing. I captured the photos where my distinct handwriting was visible on the album sleeves. I captured the insulting caption. I saved everything into a secure folder on my cloud drive labeled receipts. I let him sell them. Let him think he got away with it. He was trading a few $100s now for a reckoning that would cost him everything later. While Brody sold my past for pocket change, I was building my future. At the agency, I poured all my frustration into a campaign for a new organic beverage client. I worked late. I refined the strategy until it was razor sharp. The campaign launched and went viral within 48 hours. My boss called me into her office on a Tuesday morning. She told me I was being promoted to senior strategist effective immediately. The raise was significant. It was enough to quit the bartending job. That weekend, I went to a furniture store and bought a queen-sized memory foam mattress. It was the first piece of furniture I had ever bought that was brand new. When the delivery men set it up in my tiny apartment, I sat on the edge of the bed and bounced a little. It was firm and supportive. That night, I slept for 10 hours straight. I woke up without back pain for the first time in years. The silence in my apartment was not lonely. It was peaceful. I was building a fortress, and for the first time in my life, the gate was locked from the inside. 6 months into my new life, the silence broke. I was standing at the head of a mahogany conference table on the 42nd floor. I was in the middle of a pitch for a national tech client worth $2 million. My laser pointer was steady. My voice was confident. I was no longer the girl who got shoved into door frames. I was a professional. The glass door of the conference room opened. The receptionist stepped in. Her face was pale. "I am so sorry to interrupt, Harper," she said. Her voice was trembling. "But there is a call on the main line. The caller says it is a medical emergency regarding your family. They said it is life or death." My heart stopped. The room went dead silent. The clients looked at me with pity. For a split second, the old fear gripped my throat. I thought about my father. I thought about a car accident. I grabbed the conference phone and hit the line button. In my haste, my finger slipped, and I hit the speaker button instead of the receiver. The voice that filled the silent boardroom was not a doctor. It was not a police officer. It was my Aunt Linda. Her voice was a shriek of pure venom that bounced off the glass walls. "You ungrateful little brat!" she screamed. "Are you happy now? Your mother is in the hospital. She is having a massive heart attack because of the stress you caused her. I hope you are proud of yourself, you selfish monster." I slammed the receiver down. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. My face burned with humiliation. The client cleared his throat. I straightened my jacket. I forced my hands to stop shaking. "I am terribly sorry," I said. My voice was cold steel. "That was a family matter. Let us proceed." I finished the pitch. I answered every question. I did not let them see me bleed. The moment the clients left, I ran to the bathroom. My hands shook as I dialed the number for General Hospital. It was the only hospital near my parents' house. I navigated the automated menu. I waited for the operator. I asked for Deborah. I held my breath. "I am sorry, Ma-am," the operator said. "We have no patient by that name admitted today." I checked the emergency room log and the cardiac unit. "There is no Deborah here." The relief was instantly replaced by a rage so hot it made my vision blur. It was a lie. It was a trap. They knew I had a new job. They knew I was moving on. So they used the oldest trick in the book. They weaponized my own empathy against me. They wanted me to panic. They wanted me to rush home in tears so they could trap me back in their web of guilt and control. I did not call Linda back. I did not give her the satisfaction of hearing my voice. I opened my messaging app. I typed slowly and deliberately. "Linda," I wrote. "I just called the hospital. There is no record of Deborah being admitted. If you ever call my place of employment again, I will file a police report for harassment, and I will sue you for damages. Do not test me." I hit send. Then I blocked her number. I went back to my desk and sat down. I looked at the city skyline. They thought they could break me with fear. They did not realize that they had already killed the part of me that was afraid of them. It was almost exactly 1 year since I had walked out into the winter night. I was sitting on my new velvet sofa with a cup of coffee. The Sunday morning sunlight was streaming through the windows of my apartment. It was quiet. It was safe. It was mine. Then the silence shattered. My phone began to vibrate on the coffee table. It buzzed once, then again. Then it began to spasm violently against the wood. I stared at it. This was my new number. Only Paige and my employer had it. But 2 days ago, I had updated my resume on LinkedIn and forgotten to hide the contact details. It was a stupid mistake. I picked up the phone. The screen was a chaotic blur of notifications. 36 missed calls. They were all from 3 names: Mom, Dad, Brody. I unlocked the screen and scrolled through the messages. The timeline was a fascinating study in panic. The texts from 8 in the morning were furious. "Where are you, you ungrateful brat? Stop hiding from us. You think you're too good for this family." Those were from Brody. By 9, the tone shifted. "Pick up the phone, Harper. This is serious. We need to talk." That was Richard. By 10, the messages were frantic. "Please answer. We are in trouble. They are going to take everything. We are scared. Please, Harper, help us." That was Deborah. My thumb hovered over the decline button. I should have blocked them. I should have thrown the phone into the trash. But the sheer volume of the panic sparked a dark curiosity in me. They were not just angry. They were terrified. I pressed the green button. "Hello?" I said. "Harper. "Oh God, Harper, thank you." It was my mother. She was not yelling, she was sobbing. It was a raw and ugly sound that I had never heard from her before. She sounded small. She sounded broken. "What do you want, Deborah?" I asked. I kept my voice flat. "They are taking the house," she choked out. "The sheriff came yesterday. They put a notice on the door. Foreclosure. We have to leave in 30 days. I felt a jolt of shock. My parents had paid off their mortgage years ago. They bragged about it constantly. "How is that possible?" I asked. "You own the house." Deborah went quiet. I could hear Richard shouting in the background. I could hear Brody pacing. "It is Brody," she whispered. "Of course it was Brody. He wanted to help us." She sobbed. "He said he found an investment opportunity, cryptocurrency. He said he could double our retirement savings. He took the deed to the house, Harper. He forged your father's signature and took out a loan against the equity." I closed my eyes. It was worse than I thought. "So he lost the money," I said. "He lost it all." Deborah wailed. "But that is not the worst part. The bank loan was not enough for him. He borrowed more. He went to private lenders. Shark Loans, Harper. Men come to the house at night. They pound on the door. They throw bricks through the windows. They say they will hurt him if we do not pay." The silence stretched between us. I looked around my peaceful apartment. I thought about the $4.12 they had left me with. "How much?" I asked. "We need $25,000, she said. "Just to stop the legal action and pay off the interest for the private lenders. Please, Harper. We know you have a good job now. We saw your promotion online. If you send the money today, we can save the house. We can save your brother." I almost laughed. It was a sharp and bitter sound. They did not call to apologize. They did not call to see if I was alive. They called because they needed a wallet. "You want me to fix this?" I said slowly. "We are a family," Deborah cried. "Family helps each other." I looked at the phone. I remembered the clapping. I remembered the cold wind on the night I left. "I will meet you," I said. "Oh, thank God." She wept. "Do not thank me yet," I said. "I will meet you tomorrow at the coffee shop on Main Street. Bring Brody, and bring the foreclosure papers." I hung up before she could say anything else. I sat back on my sofa. The coffee was cold. The peace was gone. But for the first time in my life, I was not the one who was afraid. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early. I chose a table right in the center of the room. It was surrounded by a lunch rush crowd of lawyers and office workers. I wanted witnesses. I wanted noise. I wanted to ensure that if my family decided to make a scene, they would have an audience. I smoothed the lapel of my tailored navy blazer. I placed my designer handbag on the empty chair next to me. I took a sip of my $5 latte and waited. When they walked through the glass doors, I almost did not recognize them. The last year had aged my parents by a decade. Richard walked with a stoop. His hair was thinning and gray. Deborah looked frail. Her hands trembled as she clutched her purse to her chest. But Brody was the most shocking sight. He was gaunt. His skin was the color of old parchment, and dark circles bruised the skin under his eyes. He looked like a cornered animal. They scanned the room nervously until they saw me. As they approached the table, their expressions shifted. They took in my polished appearance. They saw the expensive cut of my jacket. They saw the new car key fob resting on the table. The fear in their eyes instantly hardened into resentment. The entitlement was still there. It was just hiding under layers of exhaustion. They sat down without a greeting. No hugs, no tears of relief. Richard looked at my coffee cup like it was an insult. "You look like you are doing well for yourself, Harper," he said. His voice was raspy. "It must be nice to buy fancy coffee while your family is about to be homeless." I set my cup down slowly. "Hello, Richard," I said. "Let us cut the small talk." He snapped. "We do not have time. The bank is moving forward. We need that money today. I assume you have savings. You clearly have money to burn on clothes. You need to withdraw it and transfer it to us immediately." Brody leaned forward. His breath smelled metallic. "You are rich now, right?" he sneered. "You are sitting here playing dress-up while Mom and Dad are suffering. How do you sleep at night knowing you left us to rot?" I looked at Brody. I looked at the man who had shoved me into a door and then begged me for $25,000. "I sleep very well, actually." I said. I sleep on a mattress I bought with my own money in an apartment that is not being foreclosed on. Deborah let out a small whimper. Harper, please, do not be cruel. Cruel? I repeated the word. I reached into my leather tote bag. I pulled out a thick manila folder. I placed it on the table with a heavy thud. It sat between us like a loaded weapon. You want to talk about cruelty? I said. Let us look at the record. I opened the folder. I pulled out the first sheet of paper. It was a high-resolution printout of the eBay listing. This is a screenshot of my vintage vinyl collection, I said. You sold it 3 weeks after I left. You listed it as trash. You used the money to buy a gaming headset. Brody went pale. That was just junk you left behind, he muttered. I pulled out the second sheet. It was a bank statement from 1 year ago. The line showing the transfer was highlighted in neon yellow. This is the transaction record from the night I left, I said. You stole $8,000 from me. You drained my life savings to punish me for escaping. You left me with $4 to survive winter. Richard looked away. He shifted in his seat. We were protecting that money. He lied. I pulled out the final item. It was a tablet. I pressed play on a video file. The sound of Deborah clapping filled the space between us. The image of Brody shoving me into the doorframe played in high definition. And this, I said. My voice dropped to a whisper. This is the moment you decided I was not a daughter, but a punching bag. You want my money. You want me to save you. But you seem to forget that I have the receipts for everything you did. I leaned back in my chair and watched the color drain from their faces. The silence at the table was heavy. I let it sit there for a long moment. I wanted them to feel the weight of their desperation. I have $25,000 in liquid assets available right now, I said calmly. I could write a cashier check today. I could walk into the bank with you and clear the arrears. I could stop the foreclosure and send the private lenders away. The relief that washed over them was palpable. Richard exhaled a breath he seemed to have been holding for weeks. Deborah closed her eyes and pressed a hand to her chest. Brody slumped back in his chair, and a smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. They thought they had won. They thought the nightmare was over because I had finally played my role as the safety net. But, I said. The word cut through their relief like a knife. My money is not free. It is not a gift. It is a purchase. Deborah opened her eyes. What do you mean, purchase? She asked nervously. I mean, I am buying the truth, I said. Take out your phone, Deborah. Open your Facebook app. She frowned. She reached into her purse and pulled out her smartphone. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Why? She asked. You are going to make a public post, I said. You are going to post it to your main feed. You are going to set the privacy to public. And you are going to tag everyone. Tag Aunt Linda. Tag Pastor Mike. Tag the entire prayer circle and the PTA board. Brody laughed nervously. You are joking, right? He said. I ignored him. I slid a piece of paper across the table. On it, I had printed the exact text I required. This is the caption you will write, I said. You will admit that you enabled Brody and his gambling addiction for years. You will admit that you stole $8,000 from my savings account to punish me. You will admit that you sat on the couch and clapped while your son physically assaulted your daughter. And then you will apologize to me by name. Deborah read the paper. Her hands began to shake violently. The paper rattled against the table surface. Her face turned a sickly shade of gray. I cannot do this, she whispered. Harper, this is insane. You want to humiliate me. The neighbors will see this. The church will see this. I will be a pariah. I took a sip of my coffee. You already are a pariah, Deborah, I said. You just have not admitted it yet. You raised a son who borrows money from criminals. You stole from your own child. The only thing you have left is a fake reputation. I am asking you to trade that fake reputation for your house. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. It was not sorrow, it was rage. You are trying to destroy me, she hissed. You want to kill me socially. What will people think? I shrugged. I do not care what they think. I care about the truth. You have 2 minutes to decide. Post the status or I leave and the bank takes the house. I cannot, she said firmly. She put the phone down. "I will not let you ruin our image over a grudge." Suddenly a loud and jarring ringtone erupted from the pocket of Richard's jacket. He jumped as if he had been shot. He pulled the phone out and looked at the screen. His face went white. His eyes widened in pure terror. "It is them," he whispered. "It is the private lenders. They said they would come to the house at noon if we did not have the money." The phone continued to ring. It was a scream demanding to be heard. "Answer it," Brody begged. "Tell them we have the money." Richard looked at Deborah. His fear snapped. The facade of the patriarch crumbled. He was just a terrified old man facing consequences he could not handle. "Post it." He roared. He slammed his hand on the table, causing the coffee cups to jump. "Post the damn update, Deborah. Do it now." "But Richard," she stammered. "The ladies at the club. To hell with the club." He screamed. "These men will break my legs. They will burn the house down. Do you want to be popular or do you want to be alive? Post the truth." Deborah flinched. She looked at her husband. She looked at her son, who was shivering with fear. Then she looked at me. I sat there unmoved. I was the banker, and the bill was due. With trembling fingers, she unlocked her phone. She opened the app. She began to type. I watched Deborah's finger hover over the blue button on her screen. Her hand was trembling so violently that she missed it the first time. She let out a sob that sounded like a wounded animal. Then she squeezed her eyes shut and tapped the glass. "Done," she whispered. Her voice was hollow. "It is done." I did not take her word for it. I picked up my own phone and opened the Facebook app. I navigated to her profile and refreshed the page. The spinning wheel turned once, twice, and then there it was. The post was long. It was humiliating. It detailed everything I had dictated. It admitted to the theft of my savings. It admitted to the enabling of Brody's gambling. It admitted to the assault in the hallway. And at the bottom, in bold text, it apologized to me by name. I sat there and watched the engagement counter tick upward. 1 like, 5 likes, 20 likes. The comments began to roll in like a tidal wave. Mrs. Gable, my high school art teacher, was the first to comment. "Oh my heavens, Deborah," she wrote. "I always wondered why Harper looked so tired in class. I thought she was just a moody teenager. I had no idea you were treating her like this." Then came the neighbors. Mr. Henderson from across the street wrote, "I told my wife I heard screaming that night. You told us Harper ran away to be with a boy. You lied to our faces for a year." Then came the friends. The church group ladies, the people Deborah had spent a lifetime impressing. Their comments were the most devastating. Susan Miller wrote, "This is disgusting, Deborah. Do not expect to see us at the charity gala next week. We do not associate with abusers." I checked for Aunt Linda. She had commented 1 minute ago, but she deleted it immediately. She went silent. The flying monkeys were retreating. They realized the castle was built on a sewer. I looked up from my phone. Deborah was staring at me. Her face was streaked with mascara tears. She looked stripped. She looked raw. She had sold her dignity, and now she was waiting for the payment. "I did it," she choked out. "I destroyed my reputation. Now give us the check. The men will be here in an hour. Transfer the money, Harper." I looked at her. Then I looked at Brody. He was wiping sweat from his forehead. He looked relieved. He looked like a man who had just dodged a bullet and was already planning how to fire the next gun. He was not sorry. He was just glad he had found someone else to pay his bill. A memory flashed in my mind. It was vivid and sharp. I was 16 years old. I was standing in the kitchen asking Deborah for $50 to pay for an advanced graphic design course at the community center. It was my passion. It was my future. Deborah had laughed at me. She was drinking wine then too. "No, Harper," she had said. "We are not wasting money on your little hobbies. If you want it, you earn it. You need to learn that the world does not hand you things. It is called tough love. If I help you, I am hurting you. You need to figure it out yourself." Tough love. That phrase had echoed in my head for 10 years. It was the excuse for every neglect, every refusal, every cold shoulder. I looked at Deborah. I looked at Richard, who was nervously checking his watch. I stood up. I picked up my leather bag. I placed the manila folder back inside it. "Well," Deborah asked. Her voice rose in panic. What are you doing? Get the checkbook. I looked her dead in the eye. I have been thinking about what you taught me, Mom, I said. I used the word mom for the first time in a year. It felt like a weapon. What are you talking about? She demanded. You taught me about tough love, I said. You told me that handing people money they did not earn makes them weak. You told me that if you save someone from their own consequences, they will never learn to survive. Brody stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. Do not do this, Harper, he warned. His voice shook. Do not play games. I am not playing, I said. I am applying your own logic. If I pay this debt for you, Brody, you will just do it again. You will borrow more. You will steal more. You will never change because you never have to feel the burn of your own mistakes. I turned to Richard. And you, I said. You stood by and watched him destroy this family. You stole my safety to buy his comfort. If I save you now, I am just enabling the next disaster. Deborah let out a scream. It was a high-pitched sound of pure terror. You promised, she shrieked. You made me post that. You made me ruin my life. You promised to help. I promised I would consider it, I said. And I have considered it. The answer is no. I zipped up my bag. I am keeping my money, I said. I am keeping it for my rent, for my food, for the life I built without you. I am applying tough love, Deborah. You need to figure this out yourself. I turned and walked toward the glass doors. Behind me, the table erupted into chaos. Brody was screaming profanities. He sounded like a demon. Richard was shouting my name. Deborah was wailing. It was a sound of total despair. Customers were staring. The baristas were frozen. I did not care. I pushed open the door and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The air was crisp and clean. The sun was shining. I could hear them screaming behind the glass, but for the first time in my life, the sound could not reach me. I walked to my car. I got in and locked the door. I checked my bank account on my phone. $25,000. Safe, secure, mine. I started the engine and drove away. I did not look back at the coffee shop. I did not look back at the people who had raised me. I felt lighter than I had ever felt in 27 years. It was over. 3 months later, the gavel fell at the bank auction. The house was gone. My parents now reside in a cramped 2-room apartment on the desolate edge of town where the highway noise never stops. Richard stands by the automatic doors of a discount supermarket wearing a polyester security uniform that is too tight for him. Deborah spends her days scrubbing other people's toilets for $20 an hour. She keeps her head down to avoid recognition. And Brody. The golden boy finally learned the value of labor. He spends 10 hours a day lifting heavy boxes at a shipping warehouse because starvation is a ruthless teacher when there is no sister left to rob. I drove past the old house yesterday. A bright red sold sign was planted firmly in the overgrown lawn. I waited for a wave of nostalgia or grief, but it never arrived. Instead, I felt a profound sense of relief. It felt like a malignant tumor had been surgically removed from my life. I drove back to my sanctuary. I walked through the door and touched the furniture I had purchased with my own earnings. I lay down on my crisp, clean sheets. I closed my eyes and slept the deep and dreamless sleep of the truly free. We are often taught that family is a bond you can never break, no matter how much it hurts. But DNA is a biological fact, not a suicide pact. True family is built on respect, safety, and mutual care, not just shared blood. Walking away from people who consistently devalue you isn't an act of cruelty. It's an act of survival. You cannot set yourself on fire just to keep others warm, especially when they are the ones holding the matches. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to close the door and never look back.